right, welcome back to Idaho Hook and Hunt. I am out here today with a couple of brand new kokanee fishermen. We've got Kylie and Scott. Kylie's a patient in my office. In case I know I told you on the first video, I'm a chiropractor in Middleton. So Kylie's a patient in my office, saw some of my videos, wanted to get out and catch some kokanee. So she and her husband are here. So you'll meet Kylie and Scott a little later as we get some fish in the boat. A couple things we're going to talk about today. I want to specifically talk a little bit about, we're going to break a little bit from the fishing at some point in this video. We'll talk a little bit about leader lengths because I have a subscriber that specifically want to know about leader lengths. Also probably talk a little bit about handling kokanee, like the best way to handle them when you've got a fish on the line, what to do to get them in the boat more consistently. And then also probably talk a little bit about depth and kokanee size a little bit later in this video. So hopefully we get into some fish. I know the fishing here has been a little bit on the slower side, but hopefully there's some bigger fish in here this year, and we maybe might put some nice kokanee in the boat. So we're gonna get to getting the rod set, and we'll get back with you in a little bit. All right, so we're going to be running 4 rods today. We're going to start with the Wonder Bread Dodger with a chartreuse Kokobo Kokobug. And on this side of the boat, we're going to be doing the shrimp krill corn. We're going to be running 2 planer boards and 2 on the downriggers today. So this one's going to be a planer board rod. And just as a reminder, this is that Mama Hog rod that I've mentioned over and over again, that I have a discount code for, which will be linked in the description. Also, just a side note of interest for all of you, I have accepted a position. I will be starting Tuesdays and Thursdays probably working at Idaho Rod and Reel, working with Ryan there in Nampa. Idaho Rod and Reel on Cortland Avenue in Nampa. So, stop on by, let's talk kokanee, come get yourself some tackle. I'll help you figure out what you need. Like I said, I'll be there Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're gonna run this back about 45 feet, lock it in. And I'm explaining this for the new fishermen on my boat as well. So this is going on a planer board, so there's a clip right here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this line. Oh, you got hooked. Clip that in, clip it into to that clip right there. Then open up the shower curtain hook, put it on that cable. And we're gonna slide it out the cable all the way to where that board is. And what that's doing is pulling line away from the boat. The line's staying shallow. It's not running very deep, but it's running away from the boat, because when the fish are shallow, this time of year in the spring, fish tend to stay pretty shallow in the water because that's where most of the food is at, shallow. And so the kokanee tend to be shallow, but when you're running through with a boat, those fish that are right on the surface scatter in front of you. So when those fish scatter, the planer board out on the side, pulls those lines out, and so those lines are running right through where those fish just scattered to. So this time of year, what you run is you run 2 different ways. You're gonna run either away from the boat out to the side and run shallow, or if you're not running out to the side, you're gonna run like I'm gonna do with this other rod. And I'm gonna put it straight out the back, but I'm gonna put it 120 feet behind the boat. That way those fish have time to kind of settle back in behind the boat before that gear gets to them. So if you want to hand me another one of those, you're good. That's, yep.
This is one?
That's one. So this one, we're going to be running green. And I went ahead and put one of these, I don't remember what these are called, these blades in front with the Majestic Dodger. And then kind of the same color, kind of a watermelon colored Kokobug behind it. Scott, how fast does that fish finder say we're going? The fish finder right in front of the screen tells you speed somewhere on it.
Okay, sorry.
2 point. Oh yeah, we're going really fast. Yeah. Do you know how? So there's a little knob back there that locks it into place. It's all the way back behind the big knob on the shaft. Do you see it back there? I can come get it. I'll get it just a moment.
Turn it.
Well, that it's just a little locking. That knob locks it. So you're gonna unlock that and then let the whole thing turn clockwise, and it's gonna slow us down a little bit. Oh, so you want to see what this is doing. So what it's gonna do? There you go. That's good right there. Yeah, that's fine. So it's gonna, once it goes underwater, so it flashes back and forth like that, and the lure is behind it. So that gets their attention, and then they bite the lure.
Okay.
So this is gonna run back about 120 feet behind. Yeah, that's perfect.
Wait, though. Are we putting that here? We're putting that
Is
here.
gonna go here and attach to this.
Okay. All right.
It is, yes. It can be very chaotic with little ones. I mean, it can be chaotic without little ones, but that's when it's good, when it gets chaotic.
Yeah.
All right, that's 120 feet. So with this one, I'm gonna take this and clip it into this clip right here. Flip it in right there, and then let it drop just a couple feet under the boat. Lock it in. So for both of you, so like with these rod holders, when a fish bites, I tell you to pick up the rod. You pick it up from the front and lift straight out, and it'll open it up. Does that make sense? You pull up this way, and it'll pop it out of there. Now, if it's still attached in the clip, like down there, you got to give it just a little pop to get it out of the clip, but I'll explain that or show it to you later.
Okay.
All right. So I started talking a little bit about water temperature earlier. For the new guy who doesn't understand it fully. So in the springtime, the water is cold.
Can I do this?
You could do that. Kokanee tend to like it they tend to be most active in between 50 and 54 degrees. What's our surface temperature right there? Does it say on the fish finder? 47. So it's still pretty cold. This one we're doing the pink and chrome Dodger with a pink hoochie behind it. And on this one, we are going to do the vanilla anise corn. But anyway, so in the spring like this, when the water is below about 55 degrees, you can just expect the fish are probably going to be feeding near the surface. You may still mark fish down below, but rarely are those fish going to be actively feeding fish. And most of the time, if you chase those fish, it's usually a waste of time. Not 100% of the time. There's nothing.
They won't get it. They just won't eat it.
Yeah. Well, if they're not feeding actively, they just won't eat. They won't feed. Nothing's a hard and fast rule. There's always exceptions, but most of the time those fish are not active, and I wouldn't spend a lot of time chasing them. Just expect that when the water is below 55 degrees, most of the fish that are feeding are going to be on the surface or close to it within the top 15 feet or so. And then as the fish go a little deeper, you start using your downriggers more and following those fish, or clip weights if you don't have downriggers. Just a rule of thumb for somebody who's just getting started out, a good rule of thumb is what they call the 100-foot rule. So meaning if you're 10 feet down, run 90 feet back. If you're 20 feet down, run 80 feet back. 50 feet down, run 50 feet back, and so on. That's just a good rule of thumb. I don't do it 100% of the time any longer, but for somebody who's new to it, that's just a good rule of thumb for figuring out how far of a setback you should have based on how deep you're running. And the other thing with Kokanee is you're safer going above them than below them. If you're marking fish at 30 feet, don't run your gear right at 30 feet, run your gear at 20 to 25 feet, because they are more likely to come up than to go down. All right, again, we're 45 feet back. We're gonna run this out to that planer board on the side. There's a couple of kinks in my, I popped it off, dang it. Didn't want to do that. I'm going to replace this cable with some kind of a braid probably here shortly, because this line has some kinks in it, and so the clips tend to get stuck out there. But that's also why I have 20 clips. I just sent another one out. So I'm out of clips in here, then I pull the whole thing and take the clips off. That's good right there. And for this last one, we're going to run orange and chrome with the orange spinner hoochie on the back on it. Not going to hit you. I'm trying not to hit you.
So on the fish finder, what does it mean? Fish have a number on it.
Oh, those aren't fish. Those are my marks from places where I've previously hooked fish and marked my spot.
Is that on the fish spot?
No, that's just the number of the waypoint. I probably need to just clear that, because those are all from last year. And I don't mark every spot. I mark spots when the fishing's a little slow and I'm having a hard time finding fish and I get a hit, I'll mark it so I can get back on that same spot again, see if there's other fish right there.
So then we'll just like this all over this.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it common to hook one fish and then shortly thereafter hook another only to hook the other?
Yes. Yes. Kokanee are a schooling fish, so it is very common if you get one to get other fish on other rods at the same time. Doubles are lots of fun. It gives a little bit of chaos on the boat, but that's what we're here for. The chaos is the best part. All right, so we're gonna break away from the video we're watching. I had a subscriber that specifically wanted to know about leader lengths. So first of all, I want to talk about why leader length is important. Kokanee at different times of the year are more and less aggressive. This time of year in the early spring, the water is cold, the fish tend to be a little lethargic, a little less aggressive. When they're less aggressive, you don't want quite as much action, and those fish don't respond as well to a lot of action on your lure as they do later in the season when the water warms up. And so I've got 2 lures here that are fresh out of the package. One is a pink and white Kokanee spinner hoochie. This is one that I consider generally to be kind of a spring lure, early season, clear water, bright days, shallow fish. So, you know, a lot of light penetration in the water. I tend to like lighter colors that time of year. Your whites, your greens, chartreuse, pink, orange, those kinds of colors tend to be good spring colors. So this is generally what I would consider to be a spring lure. So in the spring when the water is cold, the fish are not quite as active, they're not as aggressive, so I like a little bit longer leader. So you can see this leader that I've got tied up is probably 16 to 18 inches. A good rule of thumb is you take your dodger and you want to go about 2 to 2.5 times the length of your dodger. So we see right there you got 2 and about a half. So we're looking at, like I said, 16 to 18 inches in the spring on a spinner hoochie. So when that dodger is kicking back and forth, this line is 12-pound test, so it does translate quite a bit of motion back to the lure. But when you've got 16 to 18 inches back there, it's not going to translate near as much motion. It's going to, this lure, when it's back there, it's probably going to be doing a little bit of a side-to-side wiggle like this, but it's not going to be kicking, 4 or 5 inches side to side. It's probably going to be an inch to an inch and a half of wiggle, along with that spinner. And I find that in the spring, that's usually appropriate for those slightly less aggressive kokanee. Now then, as you start to warm up, get into summer, the water warms up, the fish get more aggressive, and I tend to go into darker colors as well when fish start dropping a little deeper in the water column. And so this is the black and orange Kokabug by Kokanee, and I tied this one up just now out of the package as well. And you'll see this leader is much, much shorter. This leader is, probably about 12 inches. As the water warms, the fish get more aggressive. You want to go a little shorter on those leaders. A good rule of thumb is about 1 to 1.5 times the length of the dodger. I go sometimes as short as 6 to 8 inches for my leaders. But one thing to keep in mind is as you're tying leaders, you can always make them shorter. You can't make them longer unless you want to, take completely apart and retie altogether. And so I always, when I tie them straight out of the package, I tie them maybe a little longer than what I expect I might need, because I can always shorten them a little bit on the water if I want to. But yeah, that one's going to be around 12 inches. Like I said, as fish start going a little deeper in the water column, darker colors tend to do a little bit better. So, I'm going to be fishing this when the fish are probably down around 30, 40, 50 feet down. I'll be fishing this lure on a little bit shorter leader because when that dodger is kicking back and forth with something like this, with only about a 12-inch leader, this lure is going to be kicking quite a bit more than that white one that I showed you on 16 to 18 inches. This one may be kicking back and forth, anywhere from 4 to 5 inches in translation, coming off that dodger. And as the fish get a little more aggressive, that's really what we want, is we want a little more aggressive action in that lure. Now, another thing to talk about also is there's also different types of lures. These are both spinners. They have the action of the spinner, but they don't have any action of their own. Other lures, for example, that you might use is something like a wiggle hoochie or a Brad's Kokanee cut plug, which I'm putting pictures up here. Both of those lures have their own action. So any lure that has its own action, like a wiggle hoochie or a cut plug, you're going to go a leader more like a springtime leader, 16 to 18 inches, because that lure itself is creating action back there and is not depending on the dodger to give it action. So that's kind of my take on leader lengths. If you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll certainly get back to you on those, and we will get back to the video.
Fish, blue rod. Okay, pull it up, down, pull it out. Fish, blue rod. Okay, pull it up, down, pull it out. There you go.
There we go. That is a beautiful kokanee. Just gonna rinse him off. All right, come on up here. You got to get a picture of this in front of the camera. Get him through the gills like that. Yep, that's a beautiful fish. So something I want to address again, I've already talked about this before, but I keep getting pushback from a few people on the video that I put out talking about Anderson Ranch and all the kokanee that were in there, how they're small because there's so many of them. So there is one thing I do want to correct. Somebody said, they can be small and not have very many fish, that, I'm wrong about them being small because of the population. So there's some truth to that. Kokanee are small because they are limited. They have limited resources. Now there's various things that can cause limited resources. If something happens with a lake and the lake just isn't producing the amount of food that it normally would, that can result in small kokanee and small numbers. However, when there's a lot of kokanee in a body of water, that also limits resources. That's why I said that they're small in Anderson, because there's so many fish, is because there are a lot of fish in there, which means that all the resources that are in that reservoir are being shared among more and more fish. And that's why I say more fish equals smaller kokanee, because that is generally the case. Today, we're on a body of water that doesn't have very many kokanee on it. And you've seen the first one that we put in the boat that was 18 inches, probably 2.5 pounds, maybe even 3, a big tank of a kokanee. But that's because there's not nearly as many in here, so there's a lot of resources. So those fish have a chance to grow big and fast. That kokanee that we put in the boat this morning, that's 18 inches and 2.5 pounds. That fish is probably the same age. It could be a 3-year fish, but chances are it's a 2 or a 3-year fish, which is the same age those fish in Anderson are, that are 9 to 11 inches this year. And that's just simply the reason for that is simply because more resources available for those fish equals bigger fish. Kokanee are a fast growing fish, but they have to have resources in order for them to grow. When there's a million fish in the water, there's just fewer resources for those fish to share, and so that's why they're small. All right, just as a reminder, I mentioned at the beginning of this channel that on current videos where I'm fishing in the current year, as I am on this video. This video was this last Saturday. This was May the 2nd. I don't mention what body of water specifically that I am on. However, I do want to remind you as I talk about this particular body of water that I did give a kokanee projection about a month ago. The video was titled Constant Doubles 2026 Kokanee Projection. And I talked specifically about this body of water and that numbers are expected to be down a little bit on this body of water. So I went up here on this trip. I'd heard that the reports were not great coming out of here, but I wanted to get up here and see for myself. And what I found on this particular day is that the projections, or the reports were pretty accurate. It does appear that numbers on this body of water are significantly lower than what they have been the past few years. Now, that being said, I do expect that this body of water is going to have some very big kokanee in it this year. When numbers are low, the fish tend to be quite large. And that is what you're going to see as we get into this video a little bit and we get into our first kokanee of this trip, is we do get into some very big kokanee. However, this fishing was quite slow on this particular day. And so this body of water for this year may end up looking more like a trophy fishery where you can go up and maybe, get some of the biggest kokanee of your life, The fish caught on this trip, we only caught one kokanee, but it was, between 17 and 18 inches and a couple of pounds. This body of water, I wouldn't be surprised to see some 20 plus inch kokanee come out of here this year that are probably in the 3 to 5 pound range. So if you're wanting to catch some trophy kokanee, this may be the place for it this year. But based off of what I'm seeing so far, and things could change as we get further into the season, but based off of this trip, I would expect that this is not going to be a destination where you're going to catch a lot of kokanee this year. I hope that changes, but based on what I saw today, I wasn't marking very many kokanee down deep. I expect that the feeding fish are on the surface, but I also would expect at least be marking some fish down below, and I really wasn't. We got one series of bites on this trip. We found one group of kokanee that we did get into, and we had a triple, put one in the boat, but again, I think this is going to be a slower fishery this year, but we may catch some very nice fish. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and we will see you on the next one.